There is a mineral sitting on your table right now that once cost as much as gold. Wars were fought over it, cities were built on it, empires taxed it, and revolutions were sparked by that tax. Today, you can buy a kilogram of it for less than a cup of coffee. It is not a spice, it is not a metal, it is the only rock that human beings eat, and your body cannot make a single grain of it. This is the strange story of salt. Start there, because your dependence on salt is absolute. Salt is sodium and chloride, and both are wired directly into the machinery that keeps you alive. Every time a nerve fires, every time a muscle moves, every heartbeat you have ever had runs on sodium moving in and out of your cells. Your nerves are, quite literally, electrical wires, and salt is the current running through them. Let that current drift out of range, and the signals distort. Muscles cramp and fail, thinking blurs. Your body defends its salt levels so fiercely and so constantly, precisely because everything else you do depends on it. That is why a rock ended up being treated like treasure. This is why your blood is salty, your tears are salty, your sweat is salty. You are, in a sense, carrying a small, warm ocean around inside you, and that ocean has to stay at exactly the right concentration. Your body defends that balance obsessively. If sodium runs too low, a condition called hyponatremia, your cells swell with water, including the cells of your brain. It can cause confusion, seizures, coma, and death. Ironically, one way people reach it is by drinking too much plain water, too fast, flushing the salt out. The balance matters more than the amount. So how much do you actually need? Surprisingly little. Your body needs only about 500 milligrams of sodium a day, a little over 1 gram of salt, a fraction of a teaspoon. But here is the twist that defines salt's entire modern story. The average person today eats around 10.8 grams of salt a day, more than double what health authorities recommend, and roughly 8 times what the body strictly requires. The mineral we once nearly killed for, we now consume in quantities that quietly harm us. Every grain of salt you have ever tasted was once part of an ocean. Some of it comes from the sea today, harvested by letting sunshine evaporate seawater until only the salt remains. But much of the world's salt is mined from deep underground, dug out of solid rock, hundreds of meters down. How does an ocean end up buried inside a mountain? Because those salt beds are the ghosts of ancient seas. Hundreds of millions of years ago, vast bodies of water dried up and vanished, leaving their salt behind. Over time, the earth buried it. When a miner cuts into a salt deposit today, they are standing in the fossil of a sea that evaporated before the dinosaurs. You are seasoning your food with a dead ocean. For most of human history, salt was not about flavor. It was about survival, because salt was the world's first and greatest food preservative. Before refrigeration, food rotted. A good harvest or a big catch of fish was useless if it spoiled before winter. But salt changes that. Pack meat or fish in salt and it pulls the water out, the same trick honey uses, leaving nothing for bacteria to live on. Salted food could last for months, even years. Salt did not just season food. Salt let humans store time. It meant surviving the winter, feeding an army, crossing an ocean. Whoever controlled salt controlled survival itself. Because it controlled survival, salt controlled economies. It became money. Our word salary really does trace back to the Latin for salt, from sal to salarium. But the story everyone repeats, that Roman soldiers were paid in salt, appears in no ancient source. They were paid in coins. Salarium was closer to a salt allowance, money handed over to buy it. The Romans had the same construction for other essentials, money for footwear, money for clothing. Nobody imagines a legionary being paid in sandals. Still, the link between salt and payment is stitched into our language. To be worth your salt means to be worth your wages. And elsewhere, the trade was very real. Across the Sahara, salt was carried south and exchanged directly for West African gold. The famous line that it traded pound for pound is almost certainly an exaggeration. At the mines of Tagaza, salt was so abundant that houses were built from blocks of it. But the principle held. In the right place, at the right distance, salt bought gold. In Poland, salt mines made kings rich. Cities like Salzburg, literally Salt Castle, grew up entirely around it. Venice grew wealthy, controlling the salt trade. Where there was salt, there was power. And because salt was valuable, governments did what governments always do with something valuable. They taxed it. France had the infamous gabelle, a salt tax so hated, so heavy, that it became one of the many sparks of anger feeding into the French Revolution. Centuries later, and a world away, when Britain taxed salt in India, Mahatma Gandhi set out for the sea on foot. He began with fewer than 80 followers. He walked some 240 miles. By the time he reached the coast and bent down to make salt from seawater, in open defiance of the law, thousands were walking with him. A peaceful revolution aimed at an empire fought over the right to make salt. That is how fundamental this simple mineral has been to human power. Salt did not just move money, it moved civilization, physically. Because salt had to be transported from where it was made to where it was needed, entire roads were built for it. In Italy, the ancient Via Salaria, the Salt Road, carried salt from the coast to Rome. Trade routes across the Sahara moved salt in caravans of thousands of camels. Timbuktu, one of the richest cities of the medieval world, became a legendary center of learning and wealth, in large part because it sat on the salt and gold trade. Follow the old salt roads, and you are tracing the veins of the ancient world. Salt even decided wars. Armies march on preserved food, and preserved food meant salt. Cut off an enemy's salt, and you cut off their ability to feed their soldiers through a campaign. During the American Civil War, salt works were deliberately targeted because destroying the enemy's salt supply meant their meat would rot and their army would starve. A mineral you sprinkle without thinking was once a military weapon. So why isn't salt precious anymore? Why did the mineral worth its weight in gold become the cheapest thing in your kitchen? The answer is technology. Industrial mining and large-scale evaporation of seawater made salt possible to produce in enormous quantities, cheaply, almost anywhere. What was once scarce became endless. And the moment something becomes endless, its price collapses. Salt didn't lose its importance. It lost its rarity. It is just as essential as it ever was. We simply drowned it in supply, and this is where salt's story takes its final ironic turn. For thousands of years, the human problem was getting enough salt. Our bodies evolved powerful systems to hold on to every precious grain because scarcity could kill us. Then, in just a few generations, we flipped the entire problem upside down. Today, salt is everywhere, hidden in bread, in cheese, in sauces, in nearly every processed and restaurant food. Most of the salt you eat, you never added yourself. It was already there. And the body that was built to crave salt has no break for the modern flood of it. Consistently eating too much salt raises blood pressure, and high blood pressure is one of the leading drivers of heart disease and stroke, among the biggest causes of death in the world. The World Health Organization recommends less than 5 grams of salt a day, under a teaspoon. The world averages nearly 11. The mineral our ancestors marched and died to obtain is now quietly shortening millions of lives through sheer excess. There is one more twist worth knowing. Not all salt is the same in the ways that matter and in the ways that don't. Sea salt, Himalayan pink salt, fancy flaky salts, they are marketed as healthier. But chemically, they are almost all the same thing: sodium chloride. The pink color and the trace minerals are real, but present in amounts far too small to change your health. Your body cannot tell the gourmet crystal from the plain white grain. The one meaningful difference is that most table salt has iodine added to it. That is a quiet public health masterstroke. Iodine deficiency is still the leading preventable cause of intellectual disability worldwide. But between 2003 and 2020, the number of countries with adequate iodine intake nearly doubled, almost entirely because of salt. The work isn't finished. Around 1 billion people still don't get iodized salt. But the plainest, cheapest box in the shop may be the most quietly heroic thing in your kitchen. So consider what salt really is. A mineral your body cannot live without. The first tool that let humanity beat starvation and store time. Money in crystal form. The reason for roads, cities, taxes, marches, and wars. And now, in its final act, a quiet danger precisely because we finally have too much of it. Salt built the world by being scarce. It endangers us by being everywhere. Same mineral, opposite problem. One lifetime of history in a single grain. Salt preserved food and built empires from the ground. But there was another tiny treasure from the other side of the world that empires would cross entire oceans to reach. A wrinkled little berry so valuable that men died, lied, and sailed into the unknown to find it. It sits right next to the salt on your table. And the hunt for it helped send Columbus west, looking for a shortcut that turned out to be a continent. Next time, the spice that redrew the map of the world simply has no idea what he's about to find.